John Mutchler here, and the results of a recent Gallop poll were just publicized about 3 days ago on July 30th. I suspect you haven't heard the results, but I want to share them with you after I ask you to take the very same poll that was asked of a large number of Americans. The poll has to do with people's perception of their interactions with police officers. So there are 3 questions. I want you to answer all 3, either yes or no. If you want to hit the pause button, go ahead and do that. But here is the first question. Thinking about any interactions that you may have had with the police over the last 12 months, overall, would you say that it was an overall positive experience? That's the first question. Was it an overall positive experience? Second question, again, yes or no. Thinking about any interactions you may have had with the police over the last 12 months, overall, would you say you were treated with respect? Again, the second question is, were you treated with respect? And finally, the third question is similar. Thinking about any interactions you may have had with the police over the last 12 months, overall, would you say that you were treated fairly? Were you treated fairly? Yes or no to each of those questions. And now the hard question. The hard question. I want to skip the first question. Was it an overall positive experience? I don't think most of us think getting pulled over by a police officer, there's much of a positive experience in that. But I think it's legitimate to ask, were you treated fairly and were you treated with respect? So let's skip the first question, but regarding the second 2 questions regarding respect and fairness and treated fairly, how many white American adults said yes to those 2 questions? How many white American adults said yes to the question, you were treated with respect and you were treated fairly? And just think about that for a moment. Hit the pause button if you want to. The answer, between 90 and 93% white adult Americans said they were treated with respect and they were treated fairly. Now you know what the next question is going to be. It regards the African American community. It regards our Black American friends. And I want you to know this before you answer the question in terms of percentage. This was asked after the George Floyd homicide, okay? And these are only people who had interactions with law enforcement. We're not including people that had no contact with police officers. Again, the 2 questions are thinking about any interactions that you may have had with the police over the last 12 months. Overall, would you say that the second question, you were treated with respect? And the third question, you were treated fairly? How many African Americans would say yes to that question? Would you be surprised to hear that the answer is 73 and 74% said yes? In other words, 3/4 of African Americans that had some kind of interaction with the police last year over the last 12 months would say that they were treated fairly and with respect. Why in the world do I bring this up? Well, in part because the poll just came in and I found the results surprising. Now, granted, their percentage of their positive experience, the percentage is lower than whites. That needs to change, not to bring the whites down, but to bring the African Americans up. There is still work to do in terms of the relationship between law enforcement and everybody in the African American community. But we have come a long way. So I bring this up because of the recent rallies here in Ferndale, and during those rallies, some of the ACAB signs popped up and written on the ground and on the sidewalk and things like that. And I'll tell you what ACAB, if you don't know what it means all cops are bastards. All cops are bastards. And anytime I see that, I get frustrated, I get angry. And by the way, I'm very sympathetic to the concerns of Black Lives Matter. I am, but I will not identify with a movement that won't speak out against reckless, inaccurate, and inflammatory statements and comments like ACAB. I can't. And neither should anyone who truly believes that Black Lives Matter. This idea that all cops are bastards, they're all racist pigs whose only mission in life is to hurt and destroy black lives, that's just stupid, and the facts don't bear it out. And I'll share this again. How many last year, year 2019, I think it's 2018, how many unarmed African Americans were killed at the hands of law enforcement last year? How many? Unarmed African Americans? The number is 9. It's what I keep reading, is 9. And by the way, that's 9 too many, but how many African Americans are murdered each year? And it's about 7,000. And it's not whites killing blacks any more than it's blacks killing whites. It's intraracial homicide. It's not interracial, but intraracial. Most whites are killed by whites. Most blacks are killed by blacks. And the fact is that 3/4 of homicides are committed by people who knew their victims. There's a relationship component to all of these homicides. So what does that mean? We need to focus on the real problem here. The problem is not renegade police officers. And when there are rogue officers, they need to be dealt with, and dealt with severely. I don't know a single police officer that wouldn't agree with that. But we need to focus on what the real problems are if we're going to bring about justice and bring about improvement in quality of life. Black lives matter. Of course they do, but I believe that all black lives matter. We need to focus on strengthening families. We need to encourage and support fatherhood among the African American community. We need to support the value of the ministry of neighborhood churches in the African American communities. We need to keep kids in school, out of gangs, and off of drugs. Yeah, black lives matter, you bet they do, but all black lives matter. And a big component to helping the African American community is law enforcement. Finally, defunding or cutting in half funding for law enforcement is a stupid idea, and I don't even think it is supported by the African American community themselves. Again, 3/4 of them expressing their personal feelings of respect and fairness from law enforcement. They want law enforcement in their neighborhoods. They want to be able to dial up 911 when there's trouble and know that there's a quick response from law enforcement. That is not going to happen if these large cities start to defund law enforcement. I want to close by thanking our law enforcement, our police officers, our men and women in blue. You do a good job. You have a tough job. You have my support. I also believe you have the support of a strong majority in all communities. Thank you for your good work.